Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode is once again brought to you by our friends over at Galactic Comics and Collectibles at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. Steve Orlando joins us for this episode. He's written for basically every major comic book publisher except for one that you'll hear about on this episode. But he's received Eisner nominations. He's been nominated for GLAAD Media Awards and so on and so forth. But Orlando has written books like Scarlet Witch, which came out recently, Godzilla versus America's Boston, and the upcoming actually comes out today, Warwolf over at Mad Cave Studios. But yeah, he's got a long list of comics that Steve's been a part of. So yeah, we chatted Warwolf and a couple other things on here. But before you listen to us, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, all those places. You can rate, review, subscribe over on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts, as well as youtube.com. And as always, you can find more at capesandtights.com. But this is writer Steve Orlando chatting his new comic book, Warwolf, right here on the Capes and Tights podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Steve. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, very well. Pouring outside in Boston, so happy to be inside with house technology protecting me.
I'm in Maine, so it's overcast right now. It's supposed to be rainy today, but I think it's just overcast and gross and cold, and
Well,
it
it's
is in
coming,
New
buddy.
England.
Coming, I'll tell you.
Coming my way. Yeah, exactly. Be inside. This is great. We're going to chat comics here, and you're a first timer on the podcast here. I've been actually not trying to get you. It's not like it hasn't worked. It's just like you've been on my short list for we're up 250 episodes almost. So I had Silver Vessels I wanted to get you on, and there's a couple of times where I'm like, oh, I got to get Steve on the podcast, and they just never worked in my scheduling. And now I'm like, this is amazing. And then we had to reschedule because of me. So it's like, okay, good, we're finally doing this.
That's all right. I'm happy. I'm happy to talk. And I see you got one of my books slabbed in the background. So in a way, I've been appearing for a while, I assume.
Always appearing on the podcast. Yeah, actually, yeah, I have bunch of stuff. Honestly, I just couldn't find it. I just moved. I say just moved. I moved in June. Still unpacking, if that makes any sense to you. But yeah. So let's just quickly a quick description of like how you got into comics, where you're coming from, all that stuff. Just a short something like were you into comics as a kid? You've been working for a number of publishers, so obviously now you found some success in comics. Like, how did you get where you are right now quickly?
Well, I mean, it's quick. It's quick, boring, and hopefully inspiring at the same time. Because some people have these, very like once upon a time in Hollywood type stories. Like I ran into a guy at a diner and I bought a pie and I was writing I was working for Marvel the next day, or the next week.
Yeah.
But honestly, I was just grinding, man. I went to my first Comic-Con at 12 years old trying to get work in comics, and 20 years later, thousands of rejections later, without exaggeration, it finally happened. But my story is, for better or worse, first, as I said, kind of a boring one. It's quite simple. This is the only thing I ever wanted to do.
Mhm.
I started trying to, when I was 12 years old, my mentor told me, write every day. If you want this to be a job, treat it like a job starting now. And I'm 40 years old now, and I've written every day since I was 12 without fail, legitimately. I have never not written in the time since Steve Siegel told me that in 1997. Um, and I came back every year, every 6 months with a new pitch, a new script. I got notes. I listened to the criticism, which might seem obvious, but that's something that many people who are trying to break in struggle with.
Mhm.
Which you would think is obvious, right? If you already had everything figured out, you would be in. But regardless, but I did. Like Siegel likes to say, and he is still one of my best friends. Many people start their stories with him, like I did, meeting him at a con, but few people come back. And I came back multiple times a year for 2 decades. At the end of which I finally had something that, he said was of publishable quality, professional quality. And he, as promised many years prior, put it in the hands of the folks at Image and said, what do you think about this? Eric Stevenson looked at my book, what would become Undertow, with my friend Artyom Trakhanov, and I was about a 30-second, 20-year overnight success. Um, and in that time, I had also been doing the work to build my networks outside of the creator-owned environment, so that once I had some published work, I could then have a road to working. At that point, it looked like Vertigo because most of my friends were in Vertigo, and the friends I made. Um, but look, it is not the sexy story, but it is the one that works the most. There's no one way to break in entertainment, but yeah, it's called I Worked for 2 decades of my life, and it finally happened. And I didn't spend that time, looking for praise. Yeah,
Yeah.
my mentor and one of my best friends, as I said, is a very brusque person. He didn't really waste time telling me what was good about my work. As in his words, that's what my mom was for. He told me what could be better. And,
Mm.
and by the way, that doesn't mean he was callous. But when
Yeah.
you're trying to do better, what's good is already good. You need to know what needs to still be elevated,
Hmm.
and polished. So. I like to think I had the right attitude. I certainly have an attitude, as you'll find out in this podcast. But I was grinding, my friend. And the reason I also say it's inspiring, hopefully for people, is that if you are someone who has been trying to break in for as long as I did, and it still hasn't happened, guess what? It can always happen.
Hmm.
Um, I studied, I went to college for something else in addition to writing. I was a double major. I was creative writing and Russian studies in my case. I had a shoot job for like almost a decade before I could make money off writing, but I never stopped, and the one thing I'll say for folks who are thinking, maybe it's finally not going to happen. Look, it could always be the day after you quit that it was going to happen. And that fortitude and that drive is what separates professionals from amateurs. Said
Hmm.
another way, during one of my jobs, my boss was an MFA from Columbia. It's a very fancy degree. And he once asked me, Steve, how do you get all this? How do you find time to write? Because you're working here, and I had a 2 hour commute. So, I was usually gone for like 14 hours a day, a commute included. And I said, I go home and I eat dinner for an hour, and then I write for 3 hours, and then I go to bed and I do it again. And that's what I do. And he said to me that that was impressive, but that's why I was a professional and he was an artist. And I guess that warmed his heart. But now, 10 years later, I've written hundreds of books and he's never been published. So, um, look, it is work,
Yes.
doesn't mean it's also not creative. But what I like to say is that the word job is still in the phrase dream job. So you have to build a structure, you have to work, and you have to believe in yourself because people are going to tell you that this isn't a real job. It's not something people can actually do.
Hmm.
There's a lot about our society tells you to settle. And when you're looking for any type of job in the creative arts, this isn't just about comics. We have a tendency as a species to look and understand that that is someone's job, as surely that could never be mine. There's a kind of person that watches a movie and says, that was great, but I could never do that even if I want to. And there's a kind of person that watches a movie and says, that was great, fuck you, I'm going to make something even better.
Hmm.
And that's the kind of person you have to be if you want to move forward in the creative arts in general.
That's what I mean. I listened to Kevin Smith years and years and years ago when he said, if you want to start a podcast, just start a podcast. Just do it. Put the effort in, put the quality in, things like that, and work at it. Instead of just being like, oh, one of these days I'll do that. Oh, one of these days I'll do that. Maybe I'll do that one day. And I just did it one day, and that's where I am now. And so it's really cool to hear that like you're dedicated to the thing. You
Well,
start. Was it? Go ahead.
shocking no one, Kevin Smith is right, at least in that
Yeah.
instance.
Yes, exactly, right? Oh, he knows how to talk and he knows how to podcast. So I was like, okay, if he's telling me to do it, I'm going to do it right now. I mean, there's other things in his life that he's told us people to do that I'm not going to do, but like, there's things that I will do that he said. But yeah, so you started obviously you had your Image comic Undertow, and then you did DC for a while, and you've done Marvel and so on and so forth. And actually, what we're really reason we're here to talk is you have Werewolf coming out, and you're back. Not say back, but you're like you have a new independent comic book coming out. I mean, you've done pretty much. I mean, is there a publisher that's like a well-known publisher that you haven't worked for? Not that you want to call it out, but is there?
Yeah, Oni Press.
Oh, there
But
you
you
go.
but that might change in the next year. So it's not a call out, it's a tease.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, think about it. I mean, you have it. If you go on the internet, you've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of issues at both Marvel and DC, and then combined for
Shit,
the
bro.
rest of it.
I've worked for publishers that don't even exist anymore.
Well, it's also sad in that sense because there are some books that I have liked from you that are like, okay, we're never going to get reprints or things like that, like Bulls of Beacon Hill. Like that book's not going to come back at some point, unless something's
Oh,
figured out. Unless something gets figured
never say
out.
never.
Yeah, exactly. Never. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you're back. You're doing this thing. So you've done everything. You're not done everything, but you've done a lot of things, and now you're with Warwolf here. But tell us what about Warwolf? What's Warwolf about?
Sure. Well, I haven't done everything because I haven't written the Kiss comic for Dynamite, which is actually still one of my bucket list jobs. Kiss is my favorite band. R.I.P.
Ah,
entirely.
R.I.P. Yeah,
Although originally R.I.P. Eric Carr, who was actually
yeah.
my favorite member, who we lost many, many years ago. Ironically, I just bought an E&B uh, slash a B&E shirt that had Eric and Bruce Kulick on it last week or 2 weeks ago, and I wore it to New York Comic Con. But anyway, Warwolf, yes, we are starting to do. I was an early adopter for Mad Cave, like they're just celebrating 10 years this year, I think. Might have been last year.
Yeah, last
Uh,
year.
and but I will do this to my shoulder and say that I was there when they were only 4 years old. So they've been a great company to work for. And after doing a lot of work for hire stuff, I'm also in the Gotcha Man world for them. I've done some Flash Gordon. Oh shit, did that come out yet? I will be doing some Flash Gordon. I've done some Dick Tracy. That's what I meant to say, and that is what I said. We're just going to kayfabe that other thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, and I finally said, well, what about originals, right? Because I've done all this, I've done
Mhm.
all this, and we got to talking, and we came out, and we came to Warwolf, which is essentially Beowulf meets War of the Worlds. If you want to hear me be pretentious, it's a Bildungsroman, which is essentially a life story. And I'm really, really excited. We can talk. We're here to talk about it, but I try to do stuff that is not what you can find elsewhere in the market. And oftentimes that means nobody gives a shit until later. But look, that's fine because I mean, it's not ideal, but it is fine.
Mhm.
Because as one of my friends told me once when I was not the happiest, he said, the problem with being ahead of the curve is that people like the curve.
Yes.
So here I am doing a science fiction ancient folklore mashup that is an ode to a German novel style. What's sexier than that, folks? But look, at
I
the end
mean,
of the day, like it is like that's you don't have to know any of all that. You have to know that like that's extra seasoning if you are a big time literary nerd like myself. Stunning the world with the fact that you're not a virgin. But all you really have to know is that this is about Earth's greatest hero, or is it? Is Thomas Bruin Earth's greatest hero or Earth's greatest fraud? In 1984, he repelled an attack from alien invaders, and all seemed to go his way. But once the aliens start coming back decades later over the course of his life, the question becomes, did we really win? Or was this a defeat diverted? And what did Bruin have to give up to seemingly save the world? And at the end of the day, does it even matter if he's a
mhm.
fraud or a hero when he's the one standing up for us?
You've mentioned in the probably in the solicitation or the announcement from Mad Cave that it's been held to your heart for a long time. Why now? Why is this the time to tell this story? Is it just part of the schedule, or is this like, okay, now this is the time to tell this story?
Well, I mean, a couple things. I mean, as I said, I studied Russian literature and folklore in college, so I always have something like there's always a place in my heart for some of the oldest stories, things like the
Mhm.
Epic of Gilgamesh, things like Beowulf, because I think the older a story is, the more it does speak to a core drive of us that we have as a species, and that also means the more rife it is for reinterpretation and representation and things like that. So. Why now? Well, we certainly live in a time where what is true and false is in question, and I'm being really generous there. But the point is we love, but even before that, I mean, if this came out 10 years ago, I would have
Mhm.
said the same thing in a different way. We loved, because here's the thing. Um, Folks will probably look at this and say, "Oh, obviously it's about that motherfucker in the office." But it's not just about that. It's not just about that. I mean, clearly, I mean, my opinion should be clear about that sack of shit. But uh, it's not just about that. We love to valorize people,
Yeah.
celebrities, as a culture. I could have, again, if this came out in 2010, I would have been making the same point in a different way. We love to put people on a pedestal and have unrealistic expectations of them. It's not just about shitbag.
Mhm.
It could be about oh, we love Taylor Swift, but now she's not saying the perfectly right thing. And now we question, is she really our friend? Well, no, bro, she was never your friend. She's a megastar. It's called a parasocial relationship. And at the end of the day, she's just a person. Or, look at the internet. I can't believe I'm bringing this up in a podcast, but look at the internet phenomenon known as the milkshake duck. In the morning, everybody loves this duck who likes to drink milkshakes, but by the afternoon, you find out that this duck is racist. We almost compulsively and obsessively valorize and lionize people in a way that I think is not necessarily not just fair to us, but it's not fair to them either. Nobody is perfect all the time. Most people's public persona is not who they really are because of these expectations. So, yeah, we do kind of live in a post-truth society right now, but before the bells start ringing on it being about one thing, it certainly isn't because we as a culture love to do this to people,
Mhm.
and it's like causing me physical pain to bring up one of the most overdrawn lines ever from The Dark Knight, but Harvey Dent is right. Like him saying you either what does he
Mhm.
fucking say? You either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. Look, folks, that's also Milkshake Duck. And we that is like something I
Mhm.
said compulsively, and I really, really think that. I think it's dangerous. I think it's uh toxic to your mind to sort of valorize people like that and expect them to be more than what they are, which is complicated, fallible, imperfect people who are still trying to do their best often. So, yeah, this is, I think, right. It speaks to the moment, but it would have spoken to the moment. Look, I can even counter that. I just said motherfucker and shitbag about Trump, and again, piece of shit. But there were plenty of people who were angry, if you want to keep it in the political sphere, that Obama ran on hope and change and did a bunch of illegal drone strikes. The point is, we cannot valorize anyone like this. We
Mhm.
cannot deify anyone like this because it is inevitably going to lead to us being disappointed. And that's when things get dangerous. And that's what the book is really about.
I mean, so you've had it on your heart for a long time. Has things changed over the time? You mentioned that you could do this 2010, you could have done the same thing, but did things change in your mind when you were making this story compared to when you first conceived it in your mind to now? I mean, obviously, things do as you
Well, one of
create
the
it,
things that
right? But yeah.
changes, one of the things that changes, I can finally have enough cultural cachet to sell the book. Uh,
Yeah, I mean
uh,
it's true. It's true. Have heard people say one of the things to do is to if you can get into Marvel and DC, do a lot of Marvel DC, pad your bank account, like put the money in the bank because you've been doing issues, you're doing issues, you're doing issues, to then create your own thing that you mentioned. That's something that's a little odd, around the curve that people want the curve. You have the ability to do that now because Steve Orlando has a name.
well, yeah, which a lot of people have opinions about, but that's fine. I mean, it is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what I just said. People in comics are not famous, but if you take it as a constant that we are within a sphere, of course, people are going to have all their views about me or what I really think and things like that, and that's fine. In fact, that's what the book is kind of about. So, um, what has changed? I mean, really, I think if you want to dig into it, is what the how we were going to crack it to say something new. I think I've always liked the Beowulf MILF. Jesus Christ, what's wrong with me? Myth.
I don't know. I don't know. Now I want to read this
Beowulf.
book.
Well, the Beowulf MILF is only in the Robert Zemeckis version, where Grendel's mother is a very lithe and golden Angelina Jolie. That's actually the Beowulf MILF. But the myth I've always loved.
Yes.
The question of how we would present it. Um, I think didn't really come until I realized that you could sort of modernize it and reposition it with this science fiction bent. And I love pulp sci-fi, so to be able to do an allusion to War of the Worlds as well, really, really exciting to me. I mean, I love the Republic serial
Mhm.
era. I love the Buck Rogers. I love Flash Gordon. I love shit like that. Listen, if it's old, I probably like it. Magnus Robot Fighter, also a good example. I heartbroken by the loss of Greg Hildebrandt a couple years ago, or maybe last year, because again, time's a flat circle. I think it was last year. But to that point, before his passing, we were going to collaborate on a cover for one of my books at Heavy Metal. And there's few things more Steve Orlando than getting on a call at age 38 and having basically everything in common as far as your likes and dislikes
Mhm.
with someone whose age is the inversion of the numbers in your age at age 83. And we're like, Russ Manning, fuck yeah, So um, I've always loved this kind of storytelling. The question is, how do we present it in the modern context? And this mashup finally was the way. So, like, yes, I could have done this in 2010, and it probably would have been Beowulf meets something. Would it have been
Yeah,
Beowulf War of the Worlds? Unknown. But this celebrity and deification of people is something that has been unsettling to me for quite some time. And again, I think it's a clusterfuck of unfairness because people deserve to not be on all the time. They deserve to have, like a person working at Walmart, which is a very respectable job, is allowed to make mistakes and be infallible and sometimes say the wrong thing. We don't allow that to people when they achieve a level of prominence.
yeah.
Now, of course, like I'm not a bleeding heart because they also have so much money that they could just, like whatever. But like I'm not saying that the struggles are the same, but we all deserve to be people.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
I think that's important.
I mean, you are balancing satire, drama, dark undertones of things, pulp, your sci-fi pulp saga, retro sci-fi pulp saga on this. Was there a was it difficult to balance satire versus some actual story going on here? How would this creation of this balance work?
Well, that's a good example. So, first of all, I was actually just talking to Tim Sheridan about another book recently, and I said something that I've been considering since, like, in a way, everything is satire.
Mhm.
Um, so, and I think that's true. That's a different podcast, um, but I do kind of think it's true. So in that way, everything is satire. But as to the telling, and what I mean by that is like everything is even if it's not intentional.
Yes.
If you, I mean, look, Capes comics themselves
Mhm.
are almost a satire of justice because I mean, how often does it really go that way in real life?
Yeah.
Uh, like franchises like Law and Order are a wish fulfillment of like there is. I would argue that it's extremely unlikely there's a cop like Olivia Benson that really cares that much, and there may be, by the way, and I'm happy to say that if there are, but it feels like we wish this person existed.
Mhm.
So in regards to that, I think the telling changes based on the tone of media. And right now, like, yeah, listen, Werewolf is going to have some wild tonal shifts. It's a gonzo book, but my friends, we live in a gonzo time. And, you know, not to get all political, but the president posted a fucking video of him taking giant shit on protesters earlier, an AI video this weekend. So, and again, like I think it should be clear what I think about that. But even if it wasn't, I submit to you that what the fuck is satire in a world where that happens?
I don't understand how that is just like okay, with regular day, let's just post this video. This is cool, whatever. It baffles me. Oh, Steve, I don't know, man. Like the benefit of telling stories in comics though is also you get to have fun with it. And I think that's what you're telling a story that needs to be told in the sense that, like you mentioned, you have a back. There's meat to it, but you also get to have fun with it. This is a medium that's not you're not making this like Academy Award winning film or
Oh,
documentary.
slow your roll, motherfucker. Like we could certainly,
No,
I
you can
could
win
be giving
awards.
awards for this shit. Come on now.
I apologize. I meant like documentary, like you're telling a traditional, like an actual documentary of like researching this actual subject. You're telling it in a comic book, and that's what's cool about it. I think I love it.
Oh
Mark
no, I know.
Russell is
I'm
really
just
good
busting
at
your
the idea
balls.
of telling these satire stories based in real worlds that, in my opinion, that I like that are like okay, this is a legitimate thing going on, but okay, I'm reading it in a comic book format, so I'm getting a little bit of an easier, palatable read here. Is that, I mean, do you enjoy this? I mean, this is something like obviously you can tell you're very, very passionate about it, but do you enjoy telling stories in this way and that's why you write comics specifically about this stuff?
Yeah, well, and also Mark, I mean, Mark is far smarter than I will ever be, and I think he is the master of this shit.
Yes.
Like truly, I love Mark Russell. He one of the boldest people I've ever met in the world. He came to Boston, a seafood city, and then he negged our fish, and said the salmon was better in the Pacific Northwest, which it was, but that's one kind of fucking fish, my friend. Um, but that is Mark Russell. We're
Yeah.
sitting at a restaurant in Boston. He's like, this fish is fine. I'm just like, what the hell's wrong with you? Uh, but that's why he's smart.
But that's where his mark. Yeah, exactly.
No, so I love what Mark does, and it is fun. I mean, like that's the thing. Like Like there's so many fallacies in what people talk about. People say, "Oh, like I don't want anything with a message. Why does everything have to?" In the same way that everything is satire, why does everything have to have a message these days? My friend, again, I submit to you, every single thing you've ever watched or read has a
It's
message,
a certain messaging.
whether the creators intend it or not. I remember having this argument with my father years and years and years ago. We're talking like 15 years ago. And he's like, "Oh, I love the original King Kong. There was no message there." Guess what? There fucking was. It was racism. But you just didn't see it. And maybe people didn't even intend it.
Yeah.
Like intent is different than result. We can't help but put our views into our work. And that doesn't mean like they're all polemics, but we are by design and by biology, it is incumbent upon us to speak about and write about the world as we see it. Because guess what? We only have our set of five senses. Uh,
Yes.
so it's impossible to create something that doesn't have a message. It's impossible to not intend a message,
Mhm.
but it's possible to create something that doesn't have a message. So, um,
But those are
yes,
the best stories. I mean, I think not to interrupt you, but like those are the best
no,
stories in my opinion, because I feel like there needs to be some sort of grounding thing to me in a sense that like this story has to have that through line to have a okay, I can relate to this, but also I want to see aliens. Like, aliens aren't something that I'm seeing in my backyard, but I am seeing some of the other stuff that's happening in the comic books that, like this one and Marked comics and stuff like that. Like I see that every day. So why not have that in my comics? You know what I mean? Like
I feel no, of course. It's like Tim Vigil's Web Witch. I wanted like a complicated commentary on the internet, but also women getting penetrated by USB cords. Um,
exactly. But that's my point. Like there is this spot. I mean, I've
by the
read
way, folks,
both.
that is a joke. But that is kind of what happens in the book. So
But that's the thing. It's like I like this format. Plus, you're partnered up with Marco on this, so like you have some amazing artwork on this too. This is not just we're obviously here talking to you about the comic book because you wrote it. But yeah, you obviously have some great artworks and visuals in this book that are worth reading too.
and I love Marco's visuals because they are against type. You would not
Mhm.
expect a book this kind of story to look like this. I've been wanting to work with Marco for quite some time. He feels well, douchebag phrase. He feels very European, but also it's because he is European.
Being weird.
But I love that sort of inkier, more like liquid style. I mean, obviously ink is liquid, so again, I sound like an asshole, but I mean his line style.
Mhm.
It's a very fluid style, and it's not what you normally expect. Again, to me, it almost feels more like you like the sort of pulp sci-fi you would get in the 40s or 50s or things like that. Um, and we're lucky to have him. He does an exceptional job, and I'm really really happy he was able to come on because yeah, I don't want to do a book or be part of a book that looks like everything else if I can help it. And that doesn't mean there's something wrong with everything else. It means that we can't do the same thing. Folks
Mhm.
deserve different kinds of stories and different kinds of art styles. It's been great, by the way, to see David Talaski on covers as well for this. Speaking of Hildebrandt, I mean, he's getting closer and closer every day. When you folks see the covers he has for like issues 4, 5, and 6, I mean, he's inching closer to that. And I mean, I was already extremely happy with David. I was lucky enough to be part of some of his first work in comics. So like every time we work together, it's like coming home, and he's an amazing cover artist. So I I love the book, and Mad Cave has been generous enough to bless me with an amazing set of collaborators. And yeah, the hope is we entertain you, we make you think, and we present something that looks like nothing else on the stands.
And I think that's what you get the freedom, but the freedom to do at Mad Cave. Where I'm not saying that there's constraints. You know this. There's constraints at the big two. Like you have a world to live in, a world to work in. You have rules to abide by, whereas you have only a certain set of rules to abide by when you're at somewhere like Mad Cave because this is your story.
Well, and that's why you want to do company like licensed work and originals at the
No.
same time. It's not the same kind of brain work, and
Mhm.
so in the same way that you work different muscles at the gym, you want to work your creativity in different ways. There's no pro. It's not a pejorative to say that there are rules at the big two, and I don't mean that you intend that, but oftentimes when people talk about not being able to do something on like well in my Wonder Woman or Batman or something, it's sort of framed as a complaint. It's not a complaint, at least when I say it. It's a
Yeah.
reality for a variety of reasons. When you are looking at a character that appears, um, you know, across merchandise and things like that, there's that weight and that expectation. And a good example that I learned when there is like there are things that you might not think matter, but come down to, for example, like if a kid Googles this character, may not, be ready to see. And
Hmm.
that's like things like what can appear on the same page that one of these characters, not even can they do it, or like are they doing it, but could a kid accidentally come across this? I think that's very reasonable. Because you're not, when you are working on a major media character, even if you're doing like Black Label, whatever, like
Hmm.
guess what? That exists in the same world once it's out as
Yeah.
the DC Inc. version of that
Yeah.
character. And then there's of course the weight of story, right? Like you are putting a brick in a monolith that in the case of someone like Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman is 80 plus years old. There are so many bricks there. And sometimes you take bricks out to make the Jenga analogy if you're like retconning or things like that, though I try to avoid that. But the point is that cannot crumble.
Yes.
Uh,
But and I understand that. I was just like, you couldn't
I know
tell
100%, but I
this
think a lot,
story. You couldn't tell the Werewolf story using Batman. Or any of this
exactly.
that is more
So
like your rules are you have certain places there's certain stories that need to be told continuity. There's a world, we're living in the DCKO right now, and so there's like this like things that are going on that you have to like not abide by, but like you have to follow in, which is good because like I said, there's a need for that, and we need writers like yourself to do that. Like I'm not saying that everybody should be able to do whatever they want because it would be chaos.
Well, the
It would
difference is
be
when you're doing originals, you're making your own rules, right? But it's
yes,
still, by the way, important to have them. Otherwise, you're off the
yes,
rails. And by the way, that can still be very interesting, but it might not be a story. It might be art, but it might not be a story.
yes, yes.
Things still have to that you set up still have to pay off. You folks who buy the book still need to feel satisfied and get a meal. So, but yeah, there's interest and challenge in working
Yeah.
within the constraints, and there's the opposing interests of not having them and realizing, you still now it's all on you. Like
Yes,
that's a
you
whole
have
different.
nothing to go back on. This is all you now.
You can't be like, no, it was Bill Marston. No, 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 it was me. So
And maybe you also I say big two. I call it the big two, but it's not really. I meant more on like intellectual property or things like that. Because like you obviously did Godzilla versus Boston too, where there was Godzilla can't all of a sudden nowhere like I don't know turn invisible or something. There's something you can only do certain things that the lore or the story has involved, and you have to abide by. That's really what I meant. Uh,
that's a great point actually, because if people read my Godzilla versus Boston story specifically, because there were the whole book, I was very lucky to be part of it. Our
I mean,
story
you're
was
from Boston, so hopefully it would make sense.
okay. Well, slow your roll. I'm from New York, but I live in
But
Boston.
that's what I
Uh,
meant. You reside in
but
Boston.
but so ours was set in the 1800s, and
Yes.
exactly to your point, Toho was great to work with. They were exceptional to work with. But their one note was that because that was before he would have encountered or before it would have encountered the atomic bomb, that while Godzilla could breathe fire, it could not be atomic fire because ours was in the 1800s. It was
Yes.
like a Melville take for folks who haven't
Mhm.
read the book. So that's a great point. Yes, like you need to make things work, and that can be like that for me at least. I like that challenge.
And I mean, I've talked to recently. There's the End of the World as we know it, not anthology book that just came out that's based on Stephen King's The Stand, and there was obviously certain rules like if someone based a story based before The Stand, they had to do certain things, or if it was 100 years in the future, they're like, well, there wouldn't be as many cell phones because cell phones didn't really exist as much because that's kind of went away before everybody had one, and so on. So there's the rules you have to go abide by, and that's
What a
you know,
dream. Could
yeah.
we live in that reality?
She's really seriously, but no, and I'm glad because I was born in Massachusetts, so seeing this story, I was waiting for this one for Godzilla 2. It was great. It was great. It was like this is close. I live in Maine now, and they're not going to do Godzilla versus Portland, Maine, or Bangor, Maine. It's just not going to happen. And so seeing the
Well, we
Boston one
already
was
did
like,
Godzilla fighting a giant lobster, and that's your
so,
whole gimmick. So like,
so, so I mean, God's
listen, I got the molasses flood in. Like, there's as many Boston things as I can get in there. I
that's
do like
awesome.
living here, by the way. Like,
Yes,
I'm not shitting on Boston, but it is not where I grew up.
yes,
But I got for folks who don't know, the molasses flood in Godzilla versus Boston is a real thing. I just moved it up back about 50 years in time.
it's time is time is flat, right? You just mentioned that. So yeah, so it's fun. So if a Warwolf is Mad Cave Studios again, one of my favorite companies to work with on the press side of this. They're phenomenal. They've got great, amazing. They send packages out to people and with like fun things to go around it. They're just good to work with. So I imagine just the same similar situation on your side as a writer or a creator to be with someone like Mad Cave for something like this. You mentioned already, but it's good company to work with.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's great to have people that support your ideas and not just support, by the way, but like want to challenge them and make them better. Like that's
Mm.
part of the game, and that's what Mad Cave does, and we're very thankful for it. The royal we in this case. I'm very
Yes,
thankful.
yes. October 22nd is when it hits shelves everywhere. Issue one. So we're right here. We're in the week of this episode. I mean this issue dropping. If you go to your store and they have a shelf copy, grab the copy because I liked it a lot. It was a lot of fun. I had to. It's hard to say that I haven't. It's hard to say that I have not liked any of your stuff. Like your stuff's amazing. I don't. Pretty much
Well,
you write something, I'm gonna pick it
I'm
up.
sure I've written something that pissed you off, man, and that's fine. When like it's bound to happen, and that's
It,
okay.
it is, and
Uh,
it's funny 'cause I got villainized once because I like I said I live in Maine and I read a Stephen King book that I didn't like and someone was like, "How do you do it?" I'm like, "Well, it's got like 50 books out. It's obviously something I'm not going to like at some point. Like, let's be honest. Come on, you can't be perfect all the time, and every some people's eyes it's not true that he has to be
no,
perfect all the time."
sometimes he writes The Shining, and Stanley Kubrick makes it better.
Are you doing that because I have the Shining shirt on?
I didn't even realize that. You've been too close to the thing. Oh my God. No, I didn't even notice that. That's
no,
a shame. I did not see that.
no,
And by the way, like, I mean, the Shining book isn't bad, but I do think his
yeah,
like, I think it's a game of scale where he's like still angry that one of the greatest filmmakers in history made some changes to it. And he's like, Mo, but what about my book? I'm like, why don't you go back to your castle of money, my man, and just
yeah.
let it.
Also, how many adaptations of Stephen King books have been absolute shit? So like, there's that too. So like, you can't be like picking on the one that was really good and then being like, oh, yeah, all these other ones are absolute trash. There's a bunch of trash ones. There really is. I mean, it was I don't know what book it was. It was Dead Zone, I think. I think it was Dead
You didn't
Zone.
like Dead Zone? How
No,
dare you?
no, no. It wasn't. It wasn't Dead Zone. Cell. It was Cell. It was Cell because the movie also sucked. I didn't like
Wait.
not Cell is the one where this the Cell. It was with the movie was with John Cusack and
Oh, okay. So
uh
I don't know what book that is, and for a moment I was about to jump into action because I thought that it might have been the Tarsem movie with Jennifer Lopez and Vincent
no
D'Onofrio. I actually love. Um,
Cell movie. It was yes, it was who was it? Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack were in it, and the book was just I don't know, it was weird, and the adaptation was even worse. So I was like, this is not even good. And someone was like, "How dare you?" And I'm like, "Cool, you're always gonna pick out someone's favorite movie, and they're gonna shit on you anyway." But like so like I like something that someone else doesn't like. It's the way the world works. But yeah,
I mean, by
I'm
the
a fan
way,
of your writing. So whether you write something I like or not, yeah, I can read you, like I can read
and
your work.
I aspire to have good humor about it. Like there's a story
Yeah.
about Michael Caine being in Jaws: The Revenge, which is often thought of as one of the worst movies ever made. And for folks who don't know, it's a movie in which a boat, a wooden boat, which is famously not explosive because it's a sailboat, impales Jaws at the end, who is also improbably breaching up with his stomach up like an orca. And then he blows up. But once again, it's a sailboat made of wood, nothing explosive, but he explodes as though he's made of dynamite, which is famously as well not what sharks are made of. When someone asked Michael Caine about being in that movie, what did he think about being in one of the worst movies ever made? He said he thought that it bought his mother a very nice house.
Yes. I, I like the movie.
Well,
Is
I'm
that a problem?
love that for you.
Well, to me, it's always been I like things that are based in certain universe. Like I like Jaws, so like anything they can make with Jaws, good, bad, or ugly, I'm gonna watch. How about that? It was
You're just
watchable to me.
you go to Cape Cod and you're like, why are these sharks not fucking
Yeah, it's
bouncing
about something like
bubbles
that.
on their noses and shit?
Well, all the boats in Cape Cod just have C4 attached on the inside. You didn't know that? They just come with it from the manufacturer, so
Well,
that when this
I'm not
happens.
gonna go there anymore. I'm not gonna go there anymore.
No, I'm just kidding. But so Werewolf comes out October 22nd from Mad Cave Studios. Steve, you are keep up the good work because I absolutely like I said I absolutely love everything you're
Thank
putting out right now, and I think it's great. I think you're a hard worker, and it shows. But yeah, it's something coming out on Werewolf, October 22nd, number one. Grab it everywhere. I really appreciate you taking your time out to talk to me today.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll talk soon. Okay, sound good?
Absolutely.